In the beginning, you learned that paradise keeps its knives wet. Chains clinked against coral bars in Sapphire Bay until the chief arrived, pipe ember reflecting in his eyes, with a folder of disappearances and a bargain to buy back your freedom. You took it and walked out into a heat-hazed city of neon and salt, where pearl merchants smiled too wide and back alley guides smiled not at all. A ragged street prophet spoke of firewalkers who chanted by moonlight and left no ash on their feet, and a name drifted up from every whisper like smoke, Kopaheni Ka. The trail dragged you to the Golden Coast's lacquered paradise. Loungers sipped fruit sugar drinks, while staff traded glances over names that had stopped answering doors. The resort owner stalled with polished lies, but out among the palms you found the truth scorched into living wood, a cult brand, its char still smelling of oil and rites. The answer arrived as blades. An attempt to silence you spilled into a close, brutal tangle that ended with the attackers scattered in a single certainty. Someone feared the questions you were asking. You climbed to Mount Kopahena, where the earth exhaled and the stone sang low. A hidden shrine near the caldera stank of copper and incense. There, a half-transformed cultist, skin rippling like heat mirage, gasped that the rites drew from something deeper than lava and faith. Down coast, Crabfish Village watched you with tide-weary calm. Their elder spoke of old ways bent into new cruelties and led you to a coastal ruin once sealed against the sea's hunger, now breached. Whatever had been locked away was tasting daylight again. The jungle refused you passage. In the Hatari wilds, vines pulled like hands and beasts howled wrong. Even a druid's guardianship had curdled toward violence, a warning more than a fight. You pushed through to the ruins of Rotus, black basalt rising like broken teeth above a restless surf, where the cult's zealot preached that the volcano's voice spoke only to him. His magic burned hot and strangely thin, as if strung to a distant source. You broke his circle and shattered the chant. The island exhaled. In Port Ventus, under a bruised sky, the chief congratulated you and laid out the ledgers. The coin and the orders had never been island-born. They sailed from Wemb. He offered passage north, and the horizon darkened with the promise that Verdant Vale had been stirring old powers for a new empire.
Next, you traded the bright cruelty of shining sands for the breath of the swamp. Wemb banners fenced the shoreline, while water genasi glowered from beneath jeweled hoods, and tritons muttered of vanishings beneath the tide. You left the checkpoint's staged serenity for the Kukuri wetlands, where trees leaned in like juras and temples sank into mud, their prayers strangled by vines. Alligator folk watched with yellow-eyed resolve, refusing any empire's coin, and kobold smugglers weighed your purses and your pulse before offering fishbone maps. At Lake Caridia, the water's stillness was a warning. A Kenku oracle, feathers ragged with prophecy, named a spirit in chains and magisters who etched power in blood. Then the reeds split, and the swamp birthed aberrant constructs reeking of tinctures and theft. You met them in mud and fog, and left them to drift in the black water. Northward, the marsh gave way to the poised silence of the wren forest. Elven ruins glimmered with spirals of starlight and grief, while earth genasi druids murmured of the hedge of Arn, a verdict grown from thorn and time. At its root-woven threshold, the green gate tested truth rather than strength. You offered what it demanded, accepted what it took, and crossed into another world. The verdant vale unfurled like a fever dream, buildings of living bark, roadways braided from roots, air humid with perfume and spells. Smiles were practiced, etiquette was armor. Beneath the polish, you found cracks in the narrative. Histories that contradicted each other, ledgers whose lines slid into new shapes under the moon, and accounts of magisters who had simply ceased. The library's deepest floor had no stairs because it had no intention of being reached. From every corridor, one name whispered with spite and awe: the binding web, a lattice draped across elemental nodes, siphoning storm, stone, flame, and tide. The eruption you survived was only a test flare. Visions gathered like storm fronts. Prophets broke mid-sentence. Stones bled salt water. A newborn with eyes of fire breathed of the shores of sorrow, jagged black cliffs, a broken lighthouse temple, and below, an ancient primordial dreaming against shackles forged at empire's dawn. You followed a trail through skewed rain and wrong-breathing beasts to the cliffs, where the ritual had already ignited. Arcane circles pulsed and braided, feeding a singular will. At their center stood the mastermind, whether fallen archmage or older imperial relic, robe in tatters, eyes alight with a terrible vision. The spell demanded a price, and they were ready to pay it. You stepped into the heart of the design with 3 paths before you. Break the working and cast its maker to the sea, let it finish and face a titan waking in fury, or bargain with the bound mind below. However you pressed your truth into the pattern, the binding web frayed and the empire shuddered, leaving the next shape of the world to the cost you chose to bear.